Yeah, so we had a last minute dropout, so we've impromptu put a panel together. Now, there was an interesting point raised yesterday for those that attended, which was a game versus a product. So we're going to try and talk a little about what that is and get a few opinions. Now, just a brief introduction to myself, because this is the first time I've managed to stand up in front of people, I think, properly. My name's Robbie. I'm a reluctant press, I think is the best phrase, a reluctant journalist. I do a podcast and I specialise on indie podcasting. And the only analogy I can think to come up with for those that saw wonderful Keith Stewart that came up here yesterday. Has anyone seen the film Twins? Purely because there was lots of 1980s references yesterday. If Keith was Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm more the Danny DeVito of the two. So that gives you an impression of what I am. But that's enough about me. I'm just going to basically, because I have lots of opinions and know nothing, so I'm going to try and get these people who know lots to do what they need to do. I'm just going to shove a few random questions. So what we're going to start with is talk about the difference between what a game and what a product is. You've made a game but no one knows about it, so let's make something out of it. The next step. The first thing we're going to open up to the panel is, okay, you've got a game. Do you have a publisher? Do you want a publisher? Are they evil still? Some of you have got publishers, don't fire in, although I definitely know of, and others perhaps don't. How do you go about choosing the right publisher for your game? Go.
I've done self-published and published games. I recommend both, depending on what you want. It really is just a massive kind of open field, depending on what you really want out of your game. It was interesting, so Kumotion came out with Chilingo. Chilingo were lovely to work with, really enjoyed it, they were really passionate about the game and shared our love of the game. However, they come with some special things, and I think this is true of a lot of publishers, where you go, our game's finished, great, let's get it out to the publisher. The publisher sees the game, and then the publisher goes, yeah, great, here's about another 6 months worth of work. And so that can be challenging. So recommendation one is, if you're even thinking about a publisher, get your game to the publisher early, because to find out if they're going to give you additional work, you can fit that in the scope of what you're doing. Because if you budgeted 50k to make a game and they give you another 50k work, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to your potential, I know people hate this word, but return on investment, your ROI? What does that mean? Are you going to get your money back? But secondly, if you're not going to have a publisher, how are you going to get word out about your game? What's your marketing on that? And that's the hardest thing in the world. People don't like to hear this, but it's easy to make stuff, it's hard to sell it. So working out, if you're not going to have a publisher to help you sell your product, what you're going to do about that and how you're going to promote your game, get it into the hands of the audience you need to return and get your return on the time and effort for your game is a hard challenge.
Okay, I suppose I'm the other one who's got a game published. Who's heard of Blasphemy? Wow, okay, that surprised me. Yeah, so Blasphemy wasn't a game I intended to get published. I just made it as a stopgap while waiting for a certain piece of, I was going to say Unity? It was Unity. Wait, that would be ready on the Wii U, which wasn't at the time. I got approached by Mastertronic, so I didn't intend to probably say something, we can probably help you get this on Steam, so that's why I went down the route. But yeah, I agree completely, okay? The thing about publisher is the publisher should be doing things for you that you can't do yourselves. Marketing, Natalie told me I'm quite good at marketing, so I'm not quite sure whether that's true. But they should be doing that, things like localization, QA, especially if you're on console, because I mean, if you've got a Vita dev kit, you can't get other people to test your game unless they've got Vita dev kits. So they can help you with that kind of thing. And the budget is definitely, oh, you've got 50k there, I didn't get that. No? How do you get that?
Actually, it depends on the publisher. So you won't get 50k from Chilingo. Chilingo won't give you any money. That was just a number I picked out of my head. But there are publishers out there.
Isn't it?
Chilingo gives zero money. They'll give you money after your game's successful to then do a port on the platform. But I don't know anyone who will give money to help finish. But there are publishers out there. In fact, I was on the phone to a big publisher, a big new publisher the other day who was kind of talking about $200,000 to invest in game projects. There are publishers out there, but not many.
We've actually done both basically. We've got an indie company, Originate, and we've self-published half a dozen games. But recently we've also published a game through a company called 31X, which was the transport cycle conversion to mobile devices. So both ways have been great, to be honest. With 31X, they've given us a lot back in with publicity, that kind of stuff, things that, especially in America and stuff like that as well, it really helps us out there. But we were with them right from the very, very beginning. So they were involved right from the very, very beginning, dictating how the game, how they wanted the game, how the game would end up as well. So luckily there wasn't a lot of work involved in us at the end. That was all part of the whole project. So I don't know, I think there's benefits in both ways, but publishing yourself is a lot of hard work. You just be prepared for all that hard work, lots of press, getting people to find out about the game. Whereas if you've got a publicist, let them do all that for you.
Yeah, I think what I would say is a big problem with when we're talking about, like, do you need a publisher or do you not need a publisher, is it's a bit like PR. It's kind of often an afterthought at the end of the project. It's like, oh crap, do we need a publisher, do we not need a publisher? And you've got to look at a publisher as a partner in your game. Like, if you are not very good at marketing and PR and stuff like that, you don't have any money, then you need to go looking for someone who can help you with that, but it's about what they bring to the table. So it's really important to think about these things early on. If you've got weaknesses in your project and you think in your team, and you think a publisher can help you with that, then look at that early on, not like right at the end when it's kind of too late to get them on board. And like Steve said, they then help you out with the project and kind of give you bugs and features of how they think could improve the game. But if they're doing that right at the end, then your game is kind of being extended. Whereas if you've got them on board earlier, the game would be better and it'd probably be finished earlier as well. So
yeah, I would say the same thing about marketing. I agree completely with what you said. Marketing sometimes a bit of an afterthought, which is generally a mistake. When I'm at work and we're sort of looking at marketing like a new product or a new service or whatever, planning generally starts sometimes up to 3-4 months in advance, because it gives us the time to do all the research and to know exactly, everything it's about, exactly how to market it, who we should be marketing it to. It's a really long, complicated process, so you can't really rush it right at the end. I mean, you can market your games yourself, that is, totally doable, but it's kind of either end of the scale. Like, on one end of the scale, you've got a publisher who do all the marketing and PR and things like that for you. On the other end of the scale, you've got Rami Ismail of Lambert, who's probably one of the few indies I've seen that's completely mastered marketing and is pretty much a two-man team. But he's literally going around the world all the time, speaking at events and working with people, and it's an incredibly hard, taxing job. So you've really got to ask yourself where your priorities lie and whether it's a worthy investment for you to actually take a huge hours-long chunk out of your day or your week to go through that marketing process and do it yourself.
yeah, someone said yesterday, and I think it's totally true, marketing is a full-time job. And I think the other thing is that a lot of us developing games, and some of us are really lucky that we can develop our own games full-time, but for a lot of us, we're doing it alongside contract work, so already you're spending part-time actually developing your own games, and then you've got to try and market it. So look at Rami, they're really super successful, they're a good inspiration, but take note that they've got the free time to do the marketing. So, they're in a lucky position to be able to do that. You don't expect to be able to do that if you haven't got all that free time. You can't juggle that with contract work as well. It's really hard to do that well.
I mean, yeah, we go to the Lambert model. If you looked on the last few days when they did these slides in the GDC, they made some, was it $200,000 from their nuclear throne, what it's called. So that then affords you the ability to go around the world and talk about your games, which sort of leads it to stuff. It's a cyclical thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to have that money and that ability to do it in the first place.
So one of the big benefits, how many people here would be developing a mobile game, say an iOS game? Keep having if it's an iOS game. There we go. So one of the biggest things publishers can do for you is they can make it really easy for Apple to see your game. And so, for example, Chilingo have direct contacts where they have meetings every week with the guys at Cupertino where they'll show them the portfolio of all the upcoming games and go, here's the stuff that's available for your App Store. And if you're doing an iOS game, getting featured on that front page somewhere, it's the single biggest thing you can do for downloads for 1 week. That's all you've got. You've got 1 week and you will see your game go to the top of the charts and to the bottom of the charts in about that week window, but you will get decent downloads in that 1 week. So that's the single biggest thing that a publisher they can give you. But if you're going to do that yourself, the thing that most people forget is Apple don't have the App Store to make lots of money. They have the App Store to sell lots of iOS devices. So if you want to be featured, the first thing to be thinking about is how's your game making an iOS device look amazing? Why is your game going to make someone who doesn't currently own an iOS device go out and buy one? And if you start with that kind of mentality, then you're on the same wavelength as Apple. So that's going to help you become featured. The next thing you need to do is just get your game in front of Apple, which isn't the thing. You just need to email them.
Yeah, I was told once by an Apple representative, he said to me that if you want to be featured in the App Store, make sure you use all the new features in the new iPhone.
Yeah, and localising to keys and brick. Yeah.
If you're doing that whole thing of sort of selling to the platform holder, isn't that a lot more risky because you could sort of put all these extra features in and then they say, oh, we're not that keen on this particular game?
Yes, it's very risky, but it's not as risky as Impromptu, which is making a game that no one knows. And also, it's not the only thing you should be doing. If you bank on your game being successful or failing by any first-party platform holder featuring you, then you're not going to succeed. Many other people here have had their game featured on the App Store. If you get editor's choice, you don't find out until the Thursday. You actually, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't get an email from Apple saying, yes, you've got a feature. They'll go, well, you may or may not get a feature. You get the telling signs and they say, can you send us this artwork? Can you send us this? Can you send us that? But you don't get anything. You start checking in New Zealand on the Wednesday about midday to see if you got featured there. And then you kind of track it down the road and you go, oh, yeah, we're featured here, we're featured there, and isn't that cool? But you don't get any confirmation, and you can't bank a business model based on whether someone may or may not feature you. So you have to have a plan A. Being featured is your plan B. It's a very good plan B.
About the risk side of things, yeah, I mean, iOS and any kind of mobile market is very risky. Given the kind of number of games that get submitted every day. I agree with what you said earlier in your presentation. If you're working for more than 3 months on your iOS game, that's far too long. I've been contracting games that maybe take a year to develop on iOS, and they struggle to make that back at all.
Okay, moving on then, because we have such a short space to start on this. You've got a concept, you know your market, you know what you're going to do. Unfortunately, it's dirty work of money, return for investment. How do you go about finding a budget for a job or production of a game and make sure it's fit for purpose? Are there key elements that you have to consider that perhaps may not involve just pure cost of living? What are the costs you might have to consider? We talked about PR a number of times, and the potential first hire a PR specialist to help you, but are there any weird, strange costs that you should really consider?
Usability testing. Proper, formal usability testing. It's worth its weight in gold. You can get a good usability company, I can name two, so Player Research or Your Mum both do do packages. We'll do packages for mobile developers. They range from between £2,500 to £4,000, depending on what you're asking them to do. And you should be planning on 2 or 3 sessions of that. That sounds like a scary amount of money, but the amount it will save you in terms of 1-star reviews is worth its weight in gold. That's my number one tip. It's an unexpected cost.
I would probably also recommend looking into content marketing and having people look at social media. It's a bit of a weird cost. Most people don't really factor it into development, but when you're going through and you're making a game, you're actually generating a lot of content that you could then be using to market the game. So things like prototype gameplay videos, screenshots, things like that. And it's worth actually kind of putting some time and money into cataloguing all of that, making sure you can actually have all of that filter out so people kind of aware of your game, but not just on the App Store, not just on review sites, but by coming across things in other places, maybe on a TikTok thread or maybe through Twitter and things like that. But yeah, definitely sort of looking at how you can kind of subvert traditional marketing routes and kind of tell people about your game via promotion.
Yeah, I think if we kind of set the base level here and establish that most of us want to make games and we enjoy that, but we also want to make money so we can carry on making games, then you've also got to consider that making games is also making a business and running a business, and there's a lot of costs to running a business. And a lot of you might just be one person right now making a game and thinking that's all I need to worry about, but longer term you need to think about things like, maybe you're going to get an office, maybe you're not, but there's costs associated with that. Things like if you're running a company, you need accountants, All of those kind of things are worth kind of bearing in mind that maybe you don't need it right now if you're just making a game in your bedroom, but when you release the game, you know, you need to kind of know about those things like tax, stuff like that. Those are all things that can kind of eat you, which are kind of financially related that you kind of need to know about.
Okay. For me, it's costs involved or anything that stops me from making games, designing them. I'm a coder by heart, so I want to be coding games. Anything else that doesn't require me coding, I want somebody else to handle for me. So, as you mentioned about taxes, accountants, I pay X number of pounds a year for an accountant to do it all for me. I can do accounts, but I don't want to do accounts. PR, for instance, I mean, I had Natalie over there to do my PR for me in Boston. You know, I do a bit of PR, but the thing is, I wanted to concentrate on making games, so I had someone else to do it for me. It's like weird stuff. It's like for Reds, when I was showing him protocol, and I asked, he said, what should I be taking with me? Leaflets, he said, buy badges, thousands of them. So, spending money on badges. I never thought I'd be spending £100 on badges on it, but I did. So that's what's going on. So that's the kind of weird things that you don't think about. Again, for me, it's anything that stops me from making games. That's what I was going to do.
I was going to say, Jeff, do you want to add anything to that?
No.
Do you need a finance guy?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but of those sort of costs, which ones might you expect the publisher to be able to pick up?
Marketing, PR,
Localization.
there's an interesting thing here though. When we talk about publishers picking up, okay, ultimately you are picking up, okay? So a publisher will say to you, we'll localize your game for you, we'll QA your game for you, we'll do the marketing for you. They're not really saying that. What they're saying is we'll take that for your profits and when we recover that, you'll then start earning royalties. Unless you've got a really good deal. That's real. Is that true?
It depends. Some publisher deals are just a straight revenue share, so a lot of them take between 30 to 40% revenue of your game, but that would be at day one, so they don't tend to take their overhead costs and give recoups anymore. A lot of them don't anyway.
A few of them have come across their contract.
Yeah, I don't have that. And also, going back to the conversation before, don't just take a flat percentage in a contract, then normally open to some negotiation.
Yeah.
And the difference between 40% and 30% in your favour is a big difference. The other thing to think about as well is not just what costs you've got coming out, but also what money you can get back. In Richard's slides earlier, he had some listed, but two big ones. If you're based in the Midlands, you should definitely be in contact with Creative England. You need to fill in forms this week. You can claim 40% back of any out-of-pocket budget over and above. So you have to fund match. If you match something, they'll give you the other 40%, but it can't be on salary. But any of these other costs we talked about, like usability, particularly marketing, you're basically extending your marketing budget by 40%. That's worth its weight in gold. And the second one that you should definitely be doing is R&D tax credits as well. There's good standing. There's companies like Myriad who do like no-win, no-fee, put in the application for you. You've got a 100% track record in getting them for the companies they put through. It means they might not put you through because they'll review and go, are you eligible for R&D tax credits? No, you're not. Take your application back. But most game developers are eligible for about, I think it's something like 20-22% of your game development budget back as research and development if you frame credit. So these are things where, like, if you've got a budget of £10,000 and you suddenly get an extra £6,000 back on that budget just by going through and filling in some forms, it's worth its weight in gold. And if you've got bigger budgets, you get more money back. It's different what we're going to do.
I'm actually interested to find out for you, how many of you have actually got budgets for game? How many of you are just winging it along? Budgets first. Who's got a budget? Not many. Are the rest of you just winging it along then? Yeah.
That sounds like an embarrassing agreement, isn't it?
It goes back to what I was trying to say earlier, which is people do this because they almost don't think of themselves as deserving a salary. You know, we're doing this cool creative thing, so I'm not going to pay myself for this because I'm having it. So you want to be, even if you're not earning it now, work out what you think you're worth and budget your game on that, because what you want to be doing is getting that money back. So if you say, well, I'd like to be earning £30,000, so my monthly rate of £30,000 would be X, so therefore I should be aiming to get, if I spend 3 months on this game, I should be aiming to make a minimum of this, because otherwise you're not building a sustainable business. Yeah.
Just as a distinction on what you're asking how many people are winging it. How many people are winging it but have a day job?
Who's got a day job here?
So it's
And who have got day jobs and who are actually making games at the same time?
I mean, not for the day job.
But who would
Would you
work for free in the evenings in their day job? You would,
Yeah,
would you?
I'm just wondering how many people are winging it and are relying on that money. You know, so how many people are not planning but are in some way relying on that income?
Exactly, yeah.
So, that's a slightly different number.
But even if you're not, even if you're doing it in your evenings and weekends, keep track of how many hours you're spending, keep track of what you would like to be earning from that to give yourself a goal of what you should look into getting back. Because if you're thinking about, I want to do this full time, you want to be thinking about, well, can I do this full time? Has this game earned me enough money that I could do this for a living? So even if you're just doing that over and above your day job, work out how many hours you're actually spending until you can get a budget.
I mean, I often ask indies, and they ask me how you get funding and stuff like that. I say, well, how much did it take you? How much did it cost you to make the current game you're making?
Yeah.
And they go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to work that out? How do you know how much you need to get funding for? You can't just pick a number up there and go, what are you going to spend that on? And most people underestimate, like, I only need 10,000 to make this game. Yeah, you need more.
And actually if you're going, say, for investment funding, and you go in too low, they won't invest in you because they will go, this team cannot make that game for this amount of money, so I'm going to lose my investment. I'm not going to get anything for the money I put in. They'd rather see a realistic actual amount where they go, yeah, I'm comfortable with a team to make that. I'm going to get a return on my investment.
Okay. Moving on to the final questions, I'm aware that we've only got a couple of minutes left, is tools. Do you... Tools.
So brilliant.
Tools. There's the whole discussion we had yesterday whether you should build your own engine or use the tools available to you, cost saving, time, etc., etc. Is it a dirty word or is it no? Go for it.
Use Unity. Just go and use Unity. Just download it and start making games using Unity. It's an amazing community, so every time you go, well, that's going to take me a week to make that, you go, well, I can download it, it'll cost me £10 from the store. It just works. My team, their productivity is significantly better than any other tools I've seen. I sound like a Unity salesman, but I love it. It's brilliant.
I still think it depends on the project you're working on. There's pros and cons to both. I mean, all our games so far we've built using our own engine. It's not the best engine, but clearly if we want to do a 3D game, it's rubbish for that. 3D engine. And obviously if we do a 3D game, we probably use Unity. But particularly the transport side thing, there would be absolutely no way we could have used any other person's engine whatsoever. It was just, that's what we had to do. But we did use other tools to help us, obviously clearly Photoshop and things like that. Unity's not the only way to go. I loved it, yes. Of course.
Yeah, I think there's exceptions to every rule, and so obviously nothing that anyone say you can take as gospel, but coming back to my earlier point about that, if you're working part-time on your game and doing a day job or something like that, and you think you can make a game engine in the same time, I mean, think about for a second how silly that sounds. And I'll admit, like when I first started making games, I made a game engine. I made a 2D game engine. I spent a year and a half on it, and it was the best game engine in the world. And I loved it. I really enjoyed making that engine. But am I using it today? No, complete waste of time. And I think the problem is that if you like making game engines, go and make a game engine. Maybe go and sell it and do that. If you like making games, make games. And Unity is definitely not the only way to go. There's hundreds of engines, Game Maker, Monogame, even some of the really high-end tools are becoming more affordable, like Unreal Engine. And there's loads of free stuff, Progress 2D, Corona. I mean, it depends what your skill level is. But I'd say, if you want to make games and don't worry about the engine. There is exceptions, sometimes it makes sense. Like maybe doing something really, really quirky, and only you can do it in your engine, and that's what makes it unique. Fair enough, but generally, if you want to make a game, don't make a game engine. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I can agree with that. For me, technology doesn't really matter to me at all. My career started out as writing 3D engines and stuff, so I've been doing that like 15 years. I've got really respect for Andy over there making his own engine. I think it's great, and I think I'll probably end up using it. I use whatever's available to make games. I use Flash, I'll use Game Maker as it's available on Mac. I use Unity, I'll use anything really. Game Salad, I think, use that. Not even Game Salad. Anybody using Game Salad? Nobody? Right.
Is anyone using SpriteKit? That's Apple's own engine to the engine. I don't know anything about it. Every time I speak to Apple, they say, are you using our engine? No.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah, well, there you go. So it's great, and it's free if you're looking for iOS, and Apple will love you for using it. So if you've got another engine to look at, go and have a look at that.
I think we probably have to wrap it up about there. Have you got any time for any questions, or
Yeah, probably one or two.
any questions from the crowd before we call up the panel? No, we all look good. Oh, was there one over there? Sorry, I didn't see you over there, Sean.
I did have one strange question, but I think, if you have a full-time job and you're working on games at night or in your spare time, calculating your costs is really, really hard. So how would you actually suggest you go about determining how much time you're spending on your game? Like, for instance, you might put in a load of laundry while, there's like lots of multitasking that's going on. I find it quite hard to quantify this.
doing laundry, what's that?
I work at an agency. We do a lot of fast-paced work for a variety of projects. So we constantly, it's kind of like having a day job, but then also having like 9 other day jobs on top of it. So what we tend to do is use, just sort of stay organised, use a chart, so I kind of know exactly how many blocks of time, whether it's an hour, a quarter of an hour, whatever I'm spending on that. And then I think it's just an easier way to look at it, because you can kind of visually represent to yourself on a chart that maybe looks like a calendar, how many hours you've spent. I wouldn't worry about taking 15 minutes to do, the laundry. But yeah, no, I would definitely sort of just try and stay organised, be honest with yourself as well. Like, I could work on a game for 15 minutes, I'm supposed to be working on it for 4 hours, but then cat videos happened. So yeah, or Iron Brew happened, or puns, or whatever. And but yeah, be honest with yourself. Don't underestimate either. If you stayed up till 2 in the morning, even if the work's not that great, the next morning sort of still count it in. Still worked hard.
I kind of wanted to use my Twitter feed. I usually tweet around starting it out, and you need to tweet a clear picture finished. The difference between the two times.
Yeah, I think it's probably a challenge, maybe why most people don't know actually how much it costs to make their game, because it's always like in dribs and drabs. But I think like it's been said, you do need to be really realistic with yourself and say, okay, so if I was working a day job, what salary would I want/need to be comfortable and do this for a living? And then say, like an 8-hour day, that's what you've got an hourly rate, and calculate that on how much time you spend doing that work, and just stick some numbers in a spreadsheet, and by the end, I think you'd be surprised actually how much it actually costs. I think a lot of the time it's kind of, you view your time just as a free commodity, but it's not. If you're running a business and paying yourself a salary is costing money, and that's what's costing you to make the game, I think you'd be surprised actually how much that game cost you to make.
I actually saw a strange one, a Twitter conversation not long ago where developers I was asking again, how do you value your time? And the response was that they didn't honestly think that their time working on their own game is actually worth anything. Well, it is. If you work in a day job that's 8 hours a day, they cost you out some kind of cost. But if you're only running your own game, you think, it's on my own game, so therefore it's not really costing me anything. But that's what you put value to.
It's common for you to see in lots of creative industries, not just games. Like lots of architects will work on projects for free because they want to work on a particular project. You see it more and more frequently, and it's actually undermining the value of creativity. Where just because we work in creative industries, we're still entitled to get a good salary, that we can pay our bills and have a healthy lifestyle. And by doing stuff for free and not valuing the time and effort you're putting into stuff, it's devaluing your input into society.
Yeah. I think the other thing that doesn't help as well is obviously people are reluctant to talk about money and how it goes as well in clear figures. I'm not going to tell you what my hourly rate is. I'm sure most people here wouldn't say that either. So it's difficult to judge when you're asking somebody. They go, "How much is your hourly rate?" "Oh, it's enough." And you can't put that on a spreadsheet. But bottom line is, don't undervalue yourself as well. As has already been said, that happens a lot with creative stuff, not just the games industry, all over the place. And you're not free.
Yeah. Base your rate on £30,000 as a minimum, you're not going too far wrong. If you're really contracting, contractors charge a lot more. I terrify people. I tell you what, my day rate I've charged people, large successful companies, has been as high as £900 a day. But that's because I would only be working 1 month out of like 3, so you need to cover your costs, and that's why sometimes day rates are significantly higher. But if you're doing something on £30,000, that's a good. You know, that's the UK's average salary is 25,000. It's 25,000 in some shekels. So if you're saying 30,000, you're kind of in that area, and that should be your minimum. That should be your base level. If you were going to go and be a fairly low paid program somewhere, you'd be earning £30,000 a year. A good program, you don't go into the games industry for money if you're a good programmer, because you could go and do financial security in the city and be earning £100,000, £200,000 a year.
Is it better to sort of take an annual salary and then kind of work it backwards into per month?
If you're trying to cost your project, yes. If you're trying to work out a day rate, then you need to be working out, for contract work, you need to be working out how many days a month you're actively working, so you need to factor in your downtime. And I think on the base rate, people normally say if you're busy 60% of the time, you're doing incredibly well. So you basically want to be adding 40% onto your annual salary to get you to a point where if you're quoting that rate. That's kind of...
For our own projects?
Yeah, for your own projects, do £30,000, break it back down to a day rate.
We do need to wrap up. Christos, can you quickly just...
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, don't be afraid to talk to other people that do the sort of thing you do about what they charge in private conversation. Because the amount of times I've contacted someone that works freelance to do some work and ask them what the day rate is, and they say no and get repeatedly more and more nervous and agree to work for free. Like, your time is worth a lot, and you would genuinely be massively shocked at how much some people are willing to pay you. You're all talented people who deserve to be paid. Like, I would stipulate, and this, this also goes, for the games press as well. Like, don't work for free ever for anyone that could actually pay you. Like, never, under no circumstances. Don't work for exposure.
I'm afraid we do need to wrap it up then, because we've got to move on to the next talk, so I do apologise. Come and speak to the panel afterwards, I'm sure they can pick it up. So thank you to Byron, Jas, Mitch, Christos, Steve, who I forgot to introduce at the beginning, but there they are. No, Sarah's not good at this. The final thing I would also suggest, please remember, we're talking about £30,000 in average salary. That's pre-tax. You will get taxed for that. And the HMRC now has the right to go in and just take it out of your account. So just be aware of that. Thank you, Darren, for pointing that out. So with that, thank you to the panel, and we'll go to the next talk.